Hello there, and welcome to today's lesson. Today, you would learn about African and Nigerian folk tales, and by the end of this class, you should be able to 1. Recognize folk tales and identify features of Nigerian, African folk tales. 2. Narrate some Nigerian and African folk tales. And 3. Explain the theme and moral lessons of some folk tales. Have you ever been told stories about animals by your parents, about their tricks, habits, and cunningness? If you have, then you already have an idea of what folk tales are. Folk tales are stories told from generation to generation through word of mouth for people to learn from. They include tall tales, myths, and legends. Different cultures around the world normally have their unique folk tales with their unique characters, storylines, and of course, lessons. African folk tales, including Nigerian ones, are usually centered around tales of animals and how they lived in the jungle. Some unique features of African and Nigerian folk tales include the fact that 1. They are didactic. This means they are designed to teach moral lessons. 2. They are entertaining, as they are usually fun to listen to, with some even including lyrics and rhymes. 3. They are magical, as they sometimes include unusual occurrences, like talking animals. And 4. They sometimes include riddles, which are complex puzzles to be solved in the story. Having learned what folk tales are and some of their unique features, let's take a look at a popular Nigerian folk tale. The title, How the Tortoise Cracked Its Back. A long time ago there lived an old wise tortoise with a smooth hard back. His name was Ula. Ula was known for being clever and cunning, so much so that he tricked a human being into marrying him. They had 3 children. One day, at the peak of the famine in the village, God invited all the birds to come for a feast in heaven. Ula heard about this, and he was very angry. How can God host a feast in the sky when he knows I cannot fly? He cried to Aibo, his wife. The feast is for birds, Ula. Perhaps God would host one on the land too, Aibo replied. But Ula was neither satisfied nor patient. So he went around the village begging birds for feathers, which they gave him, and he stitched them together to make wings for himself. On the day of the feast, Ula wore his wings and flew with the birds to heaven. As the birds and Ula were seated at the table full of food, God stood up and gave a speech welcoming everyone, and he ended the speech by saying, "This food is for everyone." Then he asked the animals to introduce themselves, which all the birds did. When it was Ula's turn to introduce himself, he stood up and said, "My name is Everyone." And all the animals laughed, not knowing the trick he wanted to play. Once God had asked everyone to eat, Ula jumped on the table and reminded them that since God said the food was for everyone, and he introduced himself as everyone, the food all belonged to him. All the birds and even God was angry. But they let the tortoise eat all the food. When the meeting had ended, all the birds who had lent Ula their feathers decided to take it back, and now he was left without wings. Not knowing how to fly down from heaven without wings, Ula screamed from heaven to Aibo and his children to bring out all the soft objects in their homes so he can jump from heaven and land safely on them. Unfortunately, Aibo and the children didn't hear him well and thought he said, "Bring out all the sharp objects." So they brought out all the sharp objects they could find. Ula jumped from heaven in hopes to land on soft objects, but instead landed on cutlasses and knives and wood, and thereby cracking his smooth hard back. This is why all the tortoises these days have a cracked back. What do you think of this folktale? Did you learn anything? On my part, I learned something. I learned not to be greedy like Ula and to always listen very well before acting, unlike Ibo and the children. The theme of this folktale can be said to be greed. Because Ula was very greedy and didn't wait for a feast on land, nor did he want to share his food with the birds who lent him his feathers. Can you now see that folktales are entertaining, magical, and teach us a lot? There are a lot of folktales from different countries with unique and entertaining stories. You could even ask your parents to tell you one about your culture. This brings us to the end of the lesson. In this lesson, you have learned about folktales, their features, and how to narrate and learn lessons from them. With that, see you in the next lesson.